Hello, my name is Janice Arnaud. Namaste. Thank you for joining me. I'm a yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and a fitness instructor focusing on strength and conditioning for the older adult. So today I'm going to be using a pair of 3-pound weights. I kind of cycle between 3s, 5s, and 6s, even sometimes 4s. So start out with something small and increase. Or you can start with a lightweight and just increase your repetitions and your sets. So there's lots of options when using weights, and they are slightly different than using TheraBands, but they're both helpful and they both have slightly different benefits. So we've done a lot of strength training with our upper body today with bands. We're going to move on and do a few things with weights. So with your arms at your sides, we'll have your feet a little bit wider, so maybe wider than your shoulders. And we'll take a shoulder shrug. So this is to help your trapezius, that's big shoulder muscle. So on the inhale, shoulders come up. And on the exhale, just let the weight help your arm come down. Up and down. Even a 1-pound weight can be helpful. Just be mindful of how you're gripping. You want to grip enough that you don't drop your weights, but not so much that you start to have white knuckles. Okay? So doing that a few times and then just standing tall. We'll do a little side bend, similar to the exercise with the band for the QLs. So take a breath, and slightly over we go. So in this position, I'm leaning over to the side a little bit. I'm letting that weight passively pull on my shoulder. And it might be helpful to just explore here. So this is about traction, creating space in the shoulder joint. So some pendulums might be helpful, or this movement here. All different ways of moving your shoulder. Okay? And when you're ready, take a breath and come up. And we'll do the other side. So as you hinge and lean over here, just kind of leaning to the other side here, let the weight just gently pull on your shoulder. And then just see if it's just any way uncomfortable, you would come out at any time. Could let it swing forward and back. You could let the arm pendulum. And then you could also notice the sensations of turning the palm in and out. It's kind of really nice for the shoulder joint. And then come up. Shoulders roll up, back, and down. And then we're going to take our elbows nice and close. Okay, so from this position, I'm going to have my feet about hip width apart. I'm going to give you 2 options for these exercises. One is that you stay stable, okay, where your body doesn't move, and only your arms move. So I'm going to do 2 sets of 6. One set is stable feet, and the second set will be moving feet. So from here, we're going to be using your deltoids. So these are your upper outer arm muscles. And most common, you'll see this, straight arms. The thing with a straight arm is that when you have any impingement in the shoulder, the higher you go with that straight arm, the less space you give your shoulder to move in that ball and socket capsule, and it's pretty shallow for the shoulder. So it's very common that this exercise over time, if you had a shoulder injury, is just going to aggravate your shoulder. So shorter lever, more room for your shoulder. So same action, just take note when I do this and bring my elbow out and in. It's no different than this. For the arm muscle, it's no different. So giving your arm a little more space. So elbows out and in. So we've already done about 3, so I'm going to do 3 more. And then the second set, you can continue on staying stable. You could certainly do this seated as well if you wanted to sit down. Nice and slow. Something else that will happen if there's any shoulder injury is as the arms go out, you might see one shoulder do this. And if that happens, then meet your body where it is today. That might mean that your movement is 45-degree movements rather than getting that arm into that sort of 90-degree angle. Okay, so Now, pausing here, we're going to add in a very little slow dynamic movement. So the action I'm going to be taking is slightly side to side. One leg stays where it is, one leg is going to move. So I'm going to take a little step, center, out, center. And that could be as big or as small as you like. And if you just want to focus on upper body and you want to leave your footwork out, it's totally fine. The slower you go, the more muscle you use. Let's do 2 more. That's it. Last one. Very good. Excellent. Arms to your side. Shoulder roll. Shoulder shrug. Okay, so let's take a tour of your shoulder. So from this position here, we took the shoulders out to the sides. Now we're going to see if we can bring our arms up into this sort of cactus position. Again, the elbows might want to be lower down, that's fine. But in this type of class, I'm really mindful of injuries to shoulders. Anytime we're holding a weight and we're pushing overhead, we're, again, creating a lot less space for that shoulder to move. And it's very common that it aggravates a frozen shoulder or an injury. So this is as far as we go in this class. We don't go any further. The good news is just holding these weights here is a lot of work for your wrists, and this gives them a little bit of extra bone density. So let's just see how it feels to take your arms to this position. So just check in. If anything feels like it's twingy or in any way uncomfortable for your shoulder, you're going to leave that exercise out and move on to the next one. Okay. So now from here, we're going to do a little chest press. So the elbows are going to float out and in. They don't have to touch. So coming out to the sides, coming in front of you, wherever that is. These 3-pound weights are feeling like 6-pound weights already. And soon they'll feel like 12-pound weights. So I'm going to add in the movement, just give you that example. So here I am in this 90-degree angle. I would step out and back. And out and back. Slower is harder, especially with weights. Good. So that's 4. One more on either side. And then you'll be looking forward to bringing your arms down. That's it. Oh, good. Oh. All right, shoulder roll, and a big shoulder shrug. So weightlifting is going to help stabilize your joints, bone density, more oxygen to your muscles. So we're going to do a few movements front to back here. So what I'm going to do with my feet, I'm just going to step one foot slightly forward as if I'm going to take a step. Okay? And I'm going to bend my knees. So adding in the footwork with the weights is helpful, but not necessary. If you're just getting used to using weights and doing the movements, do one thing at a time and see how it goes for you. So this is just mimicking that weight transfer from the front leg to the back leg when we walk. Good. And I'm going to add in a movement here, which is a double row. And I really like it with this exercise with the weight shifting. So I'm going to roll the shoulders up, back, and down. My feet are slightly staggered, one foot in front. I'm going to bring my arms in front, not too high. And then from here, I'm going to imagine I'm pulling those arms right into my armpits. So the arms are coming down on an angle and forward and pulling in. So the shoulder blades are squeezing together. Okay. Now, if I was going to add that movement, I like to gently shift forward and then shift and pull back. I always think it's kind of like a tug of war. That pulling that rope back, shifting. If you wanted to do this without the weight shift, feel free. The weight shift does add a little layer of challenge for our agility and balance. Good. Last one. Good. So you could do 6, 8, 10, however many you'd like to do. Or feet together. Shoulder roll, shoulder shrug. Okay, so we'll do the other side. Other foot can come in front. Bend the knees. Just feel that weight shifting forward and back. Good. And then on this side, we're going to do a tricep kickback, a double. So with my arms at my side, okay, I'm going to float my arms behind me as far as they'll go. So I'm essentially not very far. So my arms are a little bit farther behind me. And then it's from here that I'm going to bend at the elbow and extend. So I'll just show you from the side here. There's that tricep kickback. Okay, so if I was to add the weight shifting, I could shift the weight from one foot to the other. Think of that movement in the arm, it just coming from the elbow straightening and the elbow bending. This is for your triceps. Sometimes you'll see this done one arm at a time. Good. Last one. Good. So again, you can do 6, 8, 10, 2 sets of 6, 2 sets of 8. Find something that works for you. I'm going to move on and use one weight now. So I'm going to tuck one weight out of the way. All right. Okay, so we're going to work on a little bit of core movements, and this is also really helpful for your agility and your balance, and from getting used to bending at the hip joint. So we're using our hip flexors to hinge forward. Okay. So my feet are wider than my shoulders. My knees are slightly bent, pulling the navel towards the spine a little bit so my core is engaged. I'm hinging from my hip joint. So my back is not rounding at all as I come into this gentle kind of forward position. I also encourage you to keep your head above your heart. So there's no benefit to looking between your legs here. So maybe finding a place in front of you to look. Use your heels to push down and bring the arms back up again. So we're going to take ourselves down. It's really a modified deadlift position. Arms extend. Think of hinging on the way down, pushing into the heels to come back up again. And just try that 2 or 3 more times. Good. Find a spot to keep your focus. And then we'll take your arms now over to one shoulder. So you're going to take them from one shoulder, they extend in front of you, and then they swing to the opposite side. Up, extend, and up. So we're getting into crossover movements. These help with balance. Great if you do anything like golfing, bowling, walking a dog, extending. Good. One more. Okay. So second motion here that you can do. Certainly you could leave this one out. I bring my feet slightly closer. Same idea, but as I extend my arms across the body, I'm going to shift my weight onto the opposing leg. So I'm adding. Now, this can be challenging for people's balance, so certainly this may be something you work towards, or maybe you just leave it out. Good, last one. So I'm aiming for about 6. Okay, let's do the other side. So the arms come up in front of you, bending at the elbows, arms to one side. You're going to extend and swing down. So up and bend, and extend and swing. Up and bend, extend and swing. Try that 2 or 3 more times. Good. Good. Okay, let's add that weight shift if you like. So I'm going to shift my weight So the arm is coming across. Be sure that you're avoiding your knee joint anywhere near it. Good. 3 more if you can. And 2. And 1. Excellent. Good job. Shoulder roll, and a shoulder shrug. Okay, so with your feet back together, the last thing you can do with your weight, again, you can do this with a water bottle, a soup can, or just the passive arm if that feels better. But it's really helpful to just loosen up the shoulder joint. Whether you just hold it and not move, or you add in that movement. And then doing the other side. So as you do the other side, again, hinging over, letting the arm just hang. Maybe the arm wants to swing. Pendulum movement. Or the hand can just turn in and out. See how it goes. Yeah, and then take a moment. As you come up, take the weights and drop them down. Good. And then maybe stretching one arm up and back. So this is a very helpful stretch for the shoulder. There's no destination when we're stretching. So my hands are touching, but they don't have to be. It could be that one hand is here and one hand's here. Okay, and then you would do the other arm. So the other arm floats up. It's like you pat yourself on the back, other arm. You may notice that there's a drastic difference between one side and the other, as there is for me. And that's just fine. And then up and out. And then notice too that the hand, just rotating the hand, will determine whether your shoulders are rolling forward or rotating out. So if you have a tendency in the day to notice the body rolls forward quite a bit, sometimes if you're walking, if you just take your gaze up and extend out, you'll be in a good position. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you feel strong and invigorated. And again, leave out whatever doesn't work for you. And thank you for practicing with me today. Namaste. You can visit me at my website, inwardboundwellness.ca, or my Facebook page, Inward Bound Wellness. Hello, namaste. My name is Janice Arnaud, and I'm a yoga therapist. Today I'd like to share a practice for back care, core strength, and a little bit of gentle flowing movement to hydrate the connective tissue in the joints. So as with any practice, I'm going to give you some modifications to go if you have knee or back issues. But even then, go slow, use your comfort to guide your movements. Leave anything out that doesn't feel good for you today. When in doubt, leave it out, or watch the video through and then pick and choose the things that you'd like to put into your practice. So we're going to get started on our backs today, and most of this class is a reclined class. So there's no pressure on the knee, no pressure on the hands. I've designed this class to help people who have back issues, but also who may not want to put weight on their knees or their hip joint or their wrist joint. So this is a nice practice if you're recovering from an injury. And so let's get started. So we're going to start with some back care and core practices. I always start with pelvic tilting. Pelvic tilting without the ball first. And again, if you don't have a ball at home, you don't have to use this. I'm going to give you lots of options to use the ball or not. This is a Pilates ball where I've taken most of the air out, so it's like a nice kind of whoopee cushion for the lumbar spine. if you have any active back pain, sometimes being on an unstable surface like the ball does not feel comfortable. If you feel your back muscles gripping or it feels like it's aggravating any vulnerability in your back, do it without. I'm going to give you both options. So we'll do it without first, just to kind of connect into these actions. So feet are hip width apart. I'm giving my feet a nice stable width, so I have some groundedness and a little bit of rooted sensation in my feet for stability. I'm going to place my hands on my lower belly. As I inhale in the nose, letting the belly fill, I'm going to gently push my tailbone into the floor gently. So what you'll notice is that there might be a little bit of space between your back of your mid back and the mat. So that's why my hand can fit here. As you exhale, you're going to flatten your back onto the mat. There's your pelvic tuck. So pelvic tilt on the inhale. Exhale. There's your pelvic tuck. So you're really just going through your general range of motion. And pelvic tilting is the #1 thing to do if you're having back pain, but it might mean that your movement is much smaller if there was an active issue happening for you. Okay, so pelvic tilting, very common in what we call the magic 4 for back care. And this little series is going to cover all 4 of those aspects. First one is pelvic tilting. So I'm going to go ahead and use the ball now, and I'm going to place it under my pelvis. If you don't have a ball or you'd prefer not to use one, just continue on as you were. So if you are going to use the ball, you're going to press into your feet, the pelvis lifts up, ball is underneath your tailbone. So it's creating a little bit of an unstable surface here. And you might notice there's a little bit extra range of motion. So I'm going to do this 4 times, arms at your side for support. Take a breath in. I'm pushing the ball, tailbone into the ball. On the exhale, I'm lengthening the tailbone. So again, you can modify and do smaller movements than your full range. Exhale. Lengthening. Inhale, fill the belly. Exhale, gathering at your center, feeling back body lengthen. Just one more. Try to relax the muscles in your face, especially the space between your back teeth. Good, and as you come to neutral. So if you're not using a ball right now, then your next option for the next stretch will be to use a block or a towel or a phone book or something to get your pelvis a little bit higher. So I'm going to stay on the ball, but again, if you didn't have a ball, you would put something else under your lower back, just under the lower pelvis area. And so those are your 2 options, either a towel, a block, or the ball. The half deflated or almost fully deflated ball. So I'm resting that ball under my lower back, okay? And I'm just going to take a moment to connect in here and feel comfortable. And then when you feel ready, we're going to see if we can stretch out one leg. So again, whether you're using a block or the ball, we have it under your lower back, under the pelvis, under the lumbar spine. We're going to start with a psoas extension. So we've been in constructive rest for a while now, which is a really helpful practice for getting that psoas muscle to relax. Your psoas muscle is the only muscle that connects your leg to your spine. It's a really important structural muscle. And it is in flexion every time you lift your leg and every time you take a step and in a seated position. So for most people, it's fairly tight. It starts in your leg, wraps through the hip, goes all the way around and attaches into the lumbar and thoracic spine. So this is a stretch to lengthen that muscle. So this is your counter stretch for sitting. And if there was one thing you could do every day, this is a great one. So whether you're on a ball or block, you're going to root down into the left foot. I'm going to lift my right toes and I'm just slowly going to stretch out my right leg. Once it's extended, if you're on a ball, it might feel comfortable to just let that foot turn inward. We're internally rotating, but again, allow your comfort to guide you and no force. So once you're there, just take a moment and relax. And we're going to extend the right arm up overhead and rest it on the floor. Now, if your arm does not want to go overhead, could be out to the side, wherever that is. Yeah, and then you're just going to take a few sigh breaths. And then just resting here. Soft jaw, soft face. And with this practice at home, I would encourage you to stay here for 2 to 3 minutes. Of course, I'm not going to stay here for that long. It could be anywhere from 3 to 6 breaths or from 3 to 5 minutes. It really depends on how much time you have and how long the pose feels comfortable. So I'm going to take one more breath here. And then slowly coming out, taking the right arm back to the side body, bending the right leg. I'm going to root down into my right foot so I have stability while I'm on this unstable surface. I'm going to lift the left toes and slowly stretch out the left leg. Once the leg is stretched out, maybe the toes can drop inward or the foot can kind of turn slightly inward. Then I'll just let it relax. Let the muscles of the face soften. And the left arm is going to extend overhead or somewhere where it feels comfortable and expansive. Could even have a prop under the arm if it needed to be up a little bit. Sometimes a sigh breath once you settle into a pose just kind of helps the body settle a little bit. Just watching the breath come and go. And again, you could stay here for 6 breaths, 10 breaths, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Usually I use 2 minutes as a good rule of thumb with this practice, this little stretch here. So it takes about 120 seconds for held tension in the fascia, connective tissue, to start to let go. So stay here as long as you'd like, and then floating the arms back, and the arm back, both legs bend. Push down into the feet to lift the hips, and we're going to take the ball out. As you lower down, just take a moment, whether you're using the block or the ball, take a moment to just rest here. We're going to do a little bit of movement to keep your body warm, and this is a nice little counter stretch. So on an inhale, I'm going to float my arms overhead. Notice I'm palms face each other as if I'm holding a block. On the exhale, I'm going to bring one knee in, just give it a hug. And I'll just continue on. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, knee to chest. Just nice and easy. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, one knee in. Good. One more time. Good. Now, we're going to hold on to this leg now. Now, it depends on your arm length and what's comfortable for you. I prefer holding my shin. Some people like the back of the thigh. You could also use a strap or a dowel. So I brought both. A dowel is just a fancy word for stick. You could use a stick if you like. I'm just going to use my hands. So I'm going to give you a very gentle SI adjustment. So SI, these are these tiny little joints at the base of your pelvis. They're weight-bearing joints. And for a lot of people, they're a little bit slippy, meaning sometimes they're not very stable, and if one slightly slips out, you'll definitely know it. It's a pretty common back issue for people. The SI joint and the psoas are really directly related to each other. This is a very gentle isometric self-adjustment. So I again encourage you to go really slow. If there's any discomfort, you're going to leave it out. You're just going to breathe here, just holding the knee. But if possible, as we stay here, on an inhale, I'm going to push. I'm literally pushing my shin into my leg or into my hands. And on the exhale, relax. Inhale gently, resisting. Exhale, relax. Inhale, push. And exhale, relax. Good. Now we're going to go into a little series of movements to awaken the hip. So again, here we're going to stretch out the opposing leg. So the left leg is going to extend out. If you have back pain and it does not feel comfortable to have your leg extended, then of course you could keep it bent. Let your comfort guide you. That is much more important than doing exactly the same thing as I'm doing. So here I am. I'm going to just take a moment to awaken my hips. So I'm going to take my right hand to the outside of my right knee, left hand to my left hip crease or my groin area just to anchor it a little bit. Take a breath. On the exhale, I'm just going to invite my right leg a little out to the side like a frog leg. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to take my left hand now to the outside of my right knee, right hand to the floor. Take a breath. Exhale, gently guiding the leg slightly across the body. The hips might roll a bit, that's fine. We're not trying to get huge amounts of movement here. Just a little wake up for the hip. Good. Now we're going to take our hands behind the leg, extend the leg up. So in this position, this might feel really extreme for some people. That's where the bent left leg would be helpful. So just check in with what works for you today. Now, something else to keep in mind, people think when you stretch your hamstrings, you need to have a fully locked leg. And in fact, that's not the case. Mainly, it's your foot that's going to determine whether the front of the body gets stretched or the back body gets stretched. So think about the heel reaching for the ceiling gently. That's going to tug on the back line of fascia and muscles in the back leg. And then take note, I'm going to take a little soft bend in my right knee as if I'm bringing my right thigh towards my body. My torso just relaxed, my hip creases softened. And now from here, instead of thinking straightening my leg, I'm going to think toes towards the forehead. There's the stretch. So you can have a knee bend and still get a really great hamstring stretch. Then I'm going to bend the knee a little bit more and then think toes to forehead. And hamstrings hold a lot of tension and a lot of emotion. So just back off anytime you feel the need to. And then when you feel like you've had enough, you're going to bring your right foot back to the floor, left knee bends, making any adjustments. We'll do the other side. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, the left knee comes in, hands are going to lace behind around the shin or the back of the thigh. And I'll try that SI joint adjustment. So on an inhale, I'm gently pushing. On the exhale, relax. Inhale, resist, push the shin into the hands or the back of the thigh into the hands. And relax. Really common adjustment that physio or chiropractors do, which is great. Do it yourself. Pushing and relaxing. Good. Good. Okay, so now from here, just see if it feels comfortable to extend your right leg out. If this does not feel comfortable, you'll keep your right leg bent. Taking the left hand to the outside of the left knee, right hand to your right hip. Take a breath. On the exhale, just encouraging your left leg to float a little bit out to the left. Good. Take a breath and come back. Right hand to the outside of your left knee. Left hand to the floor. Take a breath. Exhale, guiding the leg across the body. There's a little bit of turning on that right hip, that's fine. I'm not trying to get anywhere though. And then come back. And then hands are going to lace behind your left thigh. Okay, now, when my leg is fully straight, my hip flexor is tight. So as tight. As soon as I softly bend into the knee, even that much, everything just softened, which is going to allow me to really get at the hamstrings more than if my leg is locked and I'm trying to pull. So I'm going to soften. There's that softening sensation. And then I'm going to think toes moving towards my forehead. And then I'm going to reach a spot where maybe the body feels like it's shaking or it just feels really intense. And I'm going to soften. Ah, there it is. And then think toes to forehead. Reach through the heel again. Whether you're pointing the toe or flexing is going to determine whether you're tugging on the back line or the front line of the body. We're looking at tugging on the back line of connective tissue right now. So reaching through the heel is helpful. Good. Take a breath. Good. You can stay for as many breaths as you need to, coming out at any time. Going to bend the knee. Other knee bends. And here we are. So we're going to just bring our knees into the chest, give them a little hug. Here is where sometimes a dowel is really helpful. And again, if you didn't like using a dowel, or you don't have one, or you prefer to just use your hands, hands work too. So knees moving in a circle, one way and then the other way. This kind of massages the fascia at the back of the pelvis, lower tailbone area. Might even want to do some hip movements here. Bring the knees in and out and around. In and out and around. You can also go in the opposite direction, out and in and together. Out and in and together. Good. Okay. So then when you're ready, we're going to come back to feet hip width apart. We're going to work on moving on to the number 3 in our back care. So we've already done our pelvic tilting, which is the first one in back care, that pelvic tilting. One of the other movements that is always encouraged is some form of a hamstring stretch, which was what we just did with the leg. Okay. And now we're going to move on to bridge pose. So when we work with bridge pose, it's helpful sometimes to recruit your core a little bit so that you're not arching your spine. What I see a lot, and you really don't get the benefit of the bridge pose, 2 things I see. I see people go up and think of it as a spinal bridge, so they're thinking tailbone to the ceiling, and then what happens is the legs flop out to the side. That puts a lot of weight in your lower back, and it's not necessarily going to stretch the right muscles. So what I'm going to use is a yoga block. I often use this standing as well. If you had any active sciatica, this might not be an option for you today. You might want to leave it out. I'm going to give you another option with a strap in a moment. So with that block between the thighs, when I squeeze it, I can feel my back connect to the floor. So you might notice it in the body. You feel maybe a gathering sensation in the core. Okay? When the front body is engaged, there's a gathering in the front body and a lengthening in the back body. We want a little bit of core engagement to protect your spine here. So I want you to think maybe 30% effort with your squeeze. So just hugging that block really. And then feel your feet. Your heels are what give you leverage in this pose. So again, when I push into my heels, my pelvis just kind of wants to float up off the floor. I'm lifting my feet here just to show you that mainly the driving force here is my heels. Okay? Okay. So with the hands at the side, with bridge pose, it's not necessary to breathe in or out on the lift. I've seen it done with both. It depends on what your practice is and what your goal is. So we're going to exhale on the way up today because it's going to help recruit those core muscles a little bit more. But you could certainly inhale on the way up if that was your preference. So I'm going to take a breath. On the exhale, I'm just hugging that block. I'm going to lift the pelvis. On the inhale, I'm going to come down. So we're doing low bridge. I want you to think as the pelvis lifts, I want you to think of your tailbone going towards your heels, not towards the ceiling. So psoas extension, hip flexor extension, back body lengthening, and down. This will not only help with core muscles, psoas, but also helps with pelvic floor. Very common exercise for keeping the strength in the pelvic floor. Inhaling down. Good. So this dynamic bridge, dynamic moving bridge, flowing in and out of it. A couple more times. Good. That's it. Last one. Good. Wonderful. Wonderful. So we're going to work now with a core twist. So again, part of back care is nurturing your core muscles with strengthening exercises for all of the core muscles in the body. So we have abdominal muscles that cross over to help with twisting. We have your transverse abdominals, which act like a horizontal girdle around your spine. We have the rectus abdominals, and we have our internal, external obliques, along with many other muscles that are involved here. So, core twist. You can use this block still. I'm going to float your feet up off the floor. I'm using this block just to hug. I'm not squeezing it with any amount of effort. So just enough, it's going to help my core stay engaged. I'm going to take my arms out to the side. Whether they're a T position or lower, it just depends on your body today. Okay, so it's not a huge motion, and you could do anywhere from 6 to 10 of these. I'm just going to do 6 today. So you're going to take a breath, and on the exhale, you're going to let your knees fall a little bit to one side. Inhale, up. Exhaling over. Inhaling up. Exhaling to the side. Inhale up. Exhale over. So again, if you have a vulnerable back, your motion could be this big. The size of the twist isn't irrelevant here. It's using the integrity of our crossover abdominals. And the legs don't go very far. Yeah. So just trying one more on either side. Good. Good. And just take a break. Take your block out. Give your knees a hug here. Okay. Wonderful. So we're going to work with a few more core exercises from this position. And so the next thing I wanted to do was address doing some toe dips, or a version of dead bug. And this is a really helpful core exercise. It's deceivingly challenging, and we really want to imprint the spine here. So if there is that space between my back and the mat for this exercise, we want to imprint that spine. Very similar in Pilates, when you're using core muscles, we're kind of engaging in front body. So if I take a breath in, on the exhale, I'm going to kind of try to flatten my back onto the mat. So my core muscles are working a little harder now. So I'm going to try to keep my back flat onto the mat and float my feet up. So I'm only going to go as far as I can go before my back starts popping up off the floor. So the size of the movement is not that important. It's more the integrity of what you're sensing in the body. So I'm just hinging at the hip. Exhaling down, inhaling up. Exhaling down, inhaling up. Do not have to touch the floor. Start small. This is a deceivingly challenging exercise. We're just going to work on the lower body here. We're going to leave the arms out today. Good. So again, you could do 4 to 6 on either side, maybe more. Let's do one more on the left. Good. And then a nice hug. Good. So we're really working those core muscles today. When you're ready, we're going to place our feet back on the floor. And I just wanted to address something If the block you find that it's aggravating in any way to your lower back, the strap is also really helpful. So you would take your strap and make a fairly large loop. You're going to bring your feet through, and I'm just going to have it in sort of close to the knees, not on the knees. And you want to kind of get it so that your feet are hip width apart. So now it's the same position we were just in, but I'm using the strap to lean into so that my legs don't splay out. So it's really helpful. All right, so here I am, just kind of finding the right spacing for yourself. For some people in bridge pose, having your feet slightly wider than hip width is helpful. So again, there's not one alignment that fits everybody. So make little adjustments, experiment, and find what is the most comfortable for you. Everybody's different. So I'm kind of pressing my thighs out into the strap, arms at my side, take a breath. On the exhale, inhale down. So this is just another option. If you don't like the block between the thighs, this will still help so that your legs aren't splaying, so that your core muscles can still work. Okay. So what I would like to do here is just address doing a double leg dip. And I would only do this with the strap. It's really helpful. So I'm going to press my thighs, my outer thighs into the strap, scoop of the back so that, again, my whole back is sort of flat on the mat. So there's that bit of a pelvic tuck. And I'm going to float my legs up. Good. And I'm just going to lower them down and up. It's a really challenging core exercise. So be sure to breathe through the exercise. And again, only go as far. If you go too far, you'll notice this happen. And then my core is not working, so the benefit of the exercise is lost. So again, here my back's flat, back's flat, back's flat. I'm using my core muscles. Only going as far as I can go with integrity, and that means it could be that big. It's a lot of effort. Give your legs a little hug, a little squeeze. Rocking side to side. Good. I'm going to take the strap off. Okay. Okay. So let's just do a few movements for the hip joint. So we're going to widen my feet about the width of my mat. Take my arms out to the side. Nice gentle twist. Again, everybody's hip is different. So I like to just start with like a tiny little bit of movement just to see how the hip's feeling. Any natural movement that comes into the hip and the feet is fine. They're all connected, so everything will move when you move one part. And then as you come back to center, we're going to take a moment. We're going to work with the idea of Vinyasa, which means just linking breath and movement together. So I'm going to breathe in here. On the exhale, I'm going to let my legs drop to the right. On the inhale, they'll come up. On the exhale, they'll drop to the left. So we'll do that 2 more times. And next time they go to the right, on this 3rd time, just take a moment, maybe turning the head in the opposite direction for a breath or 2. So just a very gentle first twist. Again, you can come out at any time. When you're ready to come up, you could take 3 or 4 breaths here. Head to center, inhale, legs up. Exhale, the legs float to the other side. Head gently turns in the other direction. And then you can stay here. The eyes could close, jaw could relax. You could stay here for 3, 4, 6 breaths, however many you feel you'd like to stay for. And take your time coming back up. Good. Walk your feet in. All right, so we're going to work with a supported bridge, and we'll finish with a few of my favorite things to do in supported bridge, which are some deeper stretches for the psoas muscle, and we're also going to work the piriformis muscle, which if you have sciatica or any kind of shooting back pain with the nerve, often this is going to give you a little relief. What I like about this version is that they're hands-free, so you'll often see people do figure 4 where they do this. And then this happens. The chin juts up, the back juts up, and the core muscles aren't engaging. So this option really gives the hands a little bit of freedom, and then it'll help to keep the head, neck, and shoulders happy as well. So we're using a low block. This is a 2-inch yoga block. You can also use a towel or a blanket folded up to about 2 inches of height, and that's helpful. So here is also something to take into consideration. A lot of people lying on the ground like to have like a 2-inch block under their head. While we're doing bridge, you really wouldn't get much benefit if the hips and the head are at the same height. And you really want to avoid too much flexion in the head and flexion in the lower body at the same time. So some options would be to take a blanket or a towel like I have here. If you like a little lift and you need a little bit of lift for the head, there is a very little bit of support for my head. That is helpful for some people. I don't really need it. It doesn't really make any difference to me, so I'm going to leave it out. So I'm just lying flat on the back, knees bent, feet hip width apart. Taking your block, you're going to place it underneath your pelvis. So we're working with the pelvis. Now your pelvis, the hip bone comes up and wraps around, and around the back, this is called the iliac crest. We kind of want that to be flush with that, with the block. So it's going to be different for everybody, but ideally lower is better. What happens often is people go too high and then the back is kind of archy, and we don't want that really. So erring on the side of lower, you'll know you're too low because you'll feel like you're sliding off the block. Okay, so I'm going to again experiment a little bit. There's no one size fits all here. But here it is. So I've got my hip coming around. There's the back of my pelvis. There's that iliac crest bone. And there's the edge of the block. So when I lift it, if I lifted my legs, I feel supported. My pelvis feels supported, but not much more than the lower body. Okay, so we're going to do a little series here. So figure 4 is the final of what we call the magic 4. Actually, I don't know who we are, but the magic 4 is generally pelvic tilting, bridge pose. This is supported bridge, hamstring stretch, and figure 4. So we'll do figure 4 here. So I'm going to take my right leg up, and I'm going to just awaken my foot. So again, I mentioned already that depending on where the foot is, depends on whether your front line or back line is stretching. So we want to gently stretch back line. There it is. So avoiding straining the foot, but a little bit of reaching through the heel is also going to stabilize your knee, especially in this position. This is not so great. As soon as that foot is slightly flexed, it's a much more stable connection to my whole leg. Okay? So this first part of figure 4 is really just about encouraging space in that outer hip crease. Some people like to very gently invite a little more space here and extend the other arm overhead. Or you can just stay here and just breathe. Just breathing into the lower belly, softening the space between your teeth so your jaw can relax. Good. Okay, as we go into the second part of this, a lot of times people will just lift the leg completely, and then these muscles fire up a lot, so your hip flexor and psoas. So instead, just a slight alteration makes a big difference here. I'm going to lift the left heel and then let the rest of the left foot follow, bringing my left thigh as close as I want, noticing that the tailbone might lift up off the block. I'm feeling this muscle. We're wanting this extension. Both heels flexed a little, keeps my knees stable. Hands at my sides. And then if you'd like to invite in a little bit of movement for the knee joints and a little fluidity, you can bend and straighten the left leg. And if this does not feel comfortable, you can leave it out. So I can get fairly close here and feel quite a stretch in those glutes on the right side. And in that piriformis muscle on the side of the right hip, for a lot of people, the sciatic nerve passes right through it, which is why this is such a great stretch if you do have any sciatica or piriformis syndrome. So, staying here as long as you'd like, we're going to come out by placing the left foot back on the floor. We're going into a deeper psoas stretch here, and I'm going to give you two options. So we're going to just take hold of the shin or the left or the right thigh. The other option some people love is that dowel. Really inexpensive. You go to a hardware store and get them to cut one for you. You could sand the edges of it. So from here, holding the dowel, I'm going to give you both options. I'll show you. We're going to extend the left leg just like we did at the beginning on the ball. So really this is a reclined lunge. And then I'm going to take my leg out to the side. So if I didn't have a dowel, no problem. Hands work great. So this is very deep groin stretch. So you can get all the same benefits you'd get from lunges, from a reclined position, taking the weight off your knee and your hip. Soft jaw, soft face. And when you're ready, you come back. And we'll do the other side. So both knees bend, making any adjustments so you feel stable on your block. And we'll take the left foot up, just a bit of awakening in your foot. See how it feels. Pointing, flexing. Good. Then see if there's some gentle, maintainable flexion that can reach through the heel. Left foot on right thigh. We're encouraging the left leg to just passively fall out to the left. Just a couple soft breaths here. And again, you can experiment within your own body, but if I find where my psoas is, which is, again, inner groin area, this is the area that flexes the hip joint. If I just lift, that whole muscle has to fire a lot, and that muscle has a tendency to be overworked already. But if I lift the right heel, and then the rest of the right foot, it just takes a little bit of the stress off that joint or for the psoas. So both heels are reaching. You can go as far as you want. So as you come closer, the tailbone might come off the block a little bit. That's fine. And bending and straightening the right leg if that feels comfortable, or you could leave that out. Think of relaxing the jaw, tight hips. So all you need to do to relax your jaw is keep some space between the back teeth. And eventually, everything around the face muscles and the jaw will soften. Good. And then when you feel like you've had enough here, you're bending the right leg, placing the right foot back on the floor. Whether you're using your dowel or your hands here, you're lacing your hands around the shin or the back of the thigh, and you're stretching out the right leg. So slightly deeper psoas stretch, like a lunge. And you could stay here for 6 breaths, 3 breaths. Ease out if you need to. See how it feels to let that left leg fall out to the left, away from the torso, towards your left armpit. This is like a really deep lunge. Once in a while, a sigh breath or a breath out the mouth might help with held tension or some intensity in the sensations. If the body shakes or you cannot take a deep breath, that's a sign that you need to back up a bit and just ease off. Remember that effortless effort is always the goal in yoga. Sthira Sukham Asanam, finding effortless effort, or maintaining a sort of fine line between the amount of effort and the amount of ease in a pose. Good. Okay, here we are. So we're going to pretend that we have a wall. What if you don't have a wall? Inversions are a great thing to do every day. And if you do have a wall, I will be posting some videos with some legs up the wall. But if you don't have a wall, there's a great yin series where you use a strap instead of a wall. So we'll do that now. So I'm going to unravel my strap so it's just plain. So inversions help with circulation. They're great at the end of the day. And where I am on my block, first thing I'm going to do is hold on to the block, lift up my feet, and make sure I feel stable and I'm at a good spot for my body. And then if that's good, I'm going to place the strap on my feet, under the soles of my feet, and extend my legs up. So keep in mind that, again, if my legs are locked, that's hard on the knee, and it makes this muscle really tight. That's that hip flexor. As soon as I give a little bit of a bend there, oh, everything softens. I can still get my hamstrings by reaching through the heels. So just take a moment here, and then just see how it feels to find a wide angle. So it's a really nice place to feel this applied tension that keeps everything in its place. Tensegrity. Maybe the body can rock side to side in this gentle wide angle. You could come in and out just to kind of feel that sensation. Find a width that works for you. If you had a back issue, you'd want to avoid a wide angle, you might have to come in a little bit. You could even modify and then pull the feet towards the head. The tailbone might be floating up off the block a little bit, that's fine. And then come back. So now I'm going to wrap my hands around the strap. So my arms are just easy here. Okay. So this is just kind of like a no wall version of legs up the wall. And you could stay here for a few minutes if you like. But I'm going to take this into a modified version of a plow. And this is a really nice version, but really for me it mimics a forward fold without the deep rounding in the lumbar spine. So if I was seated with my legs out and extended and folded forward, this is a reclined version, which is a bit kinder for that lower back area. So if you had a bulging disc or any kind of lower back issue, this might be helpful. So reaching through the heels, I can even have a knee bend if I need to. I'm going to very slowly guide my toes towards my forehead. Now for some people, the hips might lift right up off the block, or it might be that you're hardly on there at all. At this point, I'm going to get rid of the strap. Now, you could be holding the back of the knees, you can hold the feet. You can go as far as you want. Some people are going to come all the way over. If you have a neck issue, I would avoid that. I would just stay here. Sometimes less is more, and that's a challenging notion for the Western mind. But I encourage you to explore that a little bit. Being kinder, doing less. Yes, you can widen the legs, close the legs. From here, I'm going to do a little happy baby. So I'm going to hold the knees, widen them, and then just take the feet. You can stay here. It's totally up to you. You can rock from side to side. They can be really wide. They can start to straighten. There's lots of options. So as we come out of this, hands to your sides. One foot comes back. The other foot comes back. Just take a moment here. And then when you're ready, we're going to push into the feet to lift the hips up. Slide your block out. Lower the body down. Giving the legs a little hug here. And so we've gone through all the main poses for back here with a few movements for your core, and always ending with some sort of resting pose. Traditional Shavasana is not for everybody, especially if you had a back issue. Constructive rest is great. So the knees drop in. Some people like to do cobbler pose at the end of their practice, which would be this position here. And then from there, you could go right into your Shavasana. But again, that might not be comfortable. Something else I wanted to address is the fascia in the body and how you can use our feet to work the fascia. So this is a very common thing, and I'll often do this before Shavasana. All I'm doing is basically wagging my feet, but notice that my whole body moves. Because when I point the toe, front line lengthens. When I reach the heels, back line lengthens. So when you do this movement, you let the connective tissue in the body kind of start sliding a little bit. And sometimes I'll even do this in bed before I go to sleep at night. So you can relax your face here. And when you feel like you've had enough, you would just relax. So traditional Shavasana, the legs are slightly wider than the hips, the arms are at your sides, palms up. But again, you could be on your side body in fetal position. You could have a bolster under your legs or a blanket under your knees. You could go ahead and bend your knees. Just taking a few moments, try tension release, squeezing every muscle, exhaling, relaxing. You may even want to put on an extra layer of clothes. And then just enjoy a little bit of time, whether it's 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes. And just letting the body rest. And watch the breath come and go, watch the thoughts come and go. Notice the temperature of the room on your skin. All the sensations, the sounds you can hear. And let that guide you for a few moments. When you feel like you're ready to move, you could stay here again for as long as you want. When you're coming out of Shavasana, I encourage you to go slowly. You can do any movements that feel good, kind of a morning stretch. Eventually the knees bend. And just really important to take your time. And so rolling to your side is a really helpful place to just take note. It's also helpful to check in at the beginning of your practice and at the end with how you're feeling. So we build interoception, this sort of understanding of the effects of these postures and movements and breathing exercises through the continual checking in process at the beginning and the end. So taking a few moments before you rush out into your day to just take a moment and notice how you're feeling before you come up to seated. And then I'll just push myself up very slowly to seated. And again, as you come into seated, that could mean different things for different people. I like to use a little block to lift my hips. Could be cross-legged, could be bent knees, you could be sitting in a chair. So we'll just take a few moments here together. Put your hands to your heart center, maybe covering the heart center. So just take a moment at the end of your practice to thank yourself for making the effort, to be kind, to be curious. And find that, if you practice even 3 or 4 poses on a regular basis, the feelings and sensations may change over time. And that while there may be 80,000 yoga poses, it might be 20 or so poses that you find work for you and keep you happy and healthy. So I thank you for your practice. Thank you for your time. Namaste. You can visit me at my website, inwardboundwellness.ca, or my Facebook page, Inward Bound Wellness.